The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to our Tuesday update call. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. This is Rebecca with the Washington Food Industry Association. And I just like to start out the calls by letting everyone know that we start everyone out muted so that our speakers can give their updates, but we will be opening it up for questions at some point. So it's very important for everyone to make sure that your phone is muted on your end so that when we start unmuting everyone, we're not getting a lot of background noise. You can always use the question panel to send us your questions, or click on the little hand raised to show that you want to speak. And with that, I will hand it over to Jan.
Hello, this is Jan G., President and CEO of the Washington Food Industry Association, and thank you so much for joining us today. We are going to kick off today's webinar with our guest from the governor's office, who will talk about the reopening of Washington and answer any questions you may have. That document got posted on our website as soon as it was released on Monday, so I hope you have been there to review it. So let me introduce to everybody Sherry Sawyer, who is a senior policy advisor to Governor Inslee, and she is the person who has been working along with Nick, working very close with us on policy and strategies that impact the grocery industry and us delivering fresh and safe food to the citizens of our state. So Sherry, thank you so much for being with us today, and I'm gonna just open it wide open for you to talk to us about reopening Washington and our role in that and how we can help Washington move forward. And we were talking to Sherry, but now we can't.
Oh no.
So Sherry, did you mute yourself?
I did not know myself.
There you are.
Can you hear me?
You're back now. Yes.
Let's try that again. So thank you, Jan, and super happy to be here this afternoon with all of you. Really appreciate the Food Industry Association inviting me in. I do want to have some expectation setting right off the bat that Jan says I will answer all your questions. I probably won't. I'm hopeful that you'll have a lot of questions that that hopefully some of which I can answer, but I'm guessing that I might have to get back to you all on some of the answers. So appreciate your patience in advance if I can't answer any questions. And as Jan mentioned, the governor did unveil his Safe Start Washington plan yesterday with 4 phases. We've already had lots of questions from all different industries, different sectors of Washington business. And I just want to acknowledge right off the bat that what an integral part of the Washington economy that you all play. And we're so grateful that you've been with us at the beginning, providing all the services that you have been to Washingtonians. And we appreciate the work that you do, and we appreciate your support and working with us as we move through this. And I'll just open it up right off the bat if anybody has any questions from the start.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and start unmuting people. So it takes me a minute to get down the list, but I am doing that now.
But please put yourself on mute if you aren't going to talk. We weren't expecting you to take questions, Sherry.
Yeah.
Kat, are you watching the chat box for Rebecca while she's doing this?
Look where it's coming from.
I'm wondering if you should. Oh, somebody doesn't have their phone on mute. Please mute your phone.
Okay, so everyone is unmuted now. If anyone has any questions, they should be able to unmute themselves from their end and ask a question.
I'm not sure how many of them have been able to review the document at this point, since it's only 24 hours old.
Sure. And maybe I can start with this, because this is an issue that Jan, you and I worked on, and that's the issue of face coverings and requirement versus recommendation, particularly for you and your employees. And one of the issues that Jan and I have been talking with for the last few weeks is this notion that, you know, Governor Inslee, because you all are on the front lines and interacting with the public on a daily basis, wanted to do everything he could do to help protect you and your employees. He wanted to make cloth face coverings a requirement, but as Jan so respectfully pointed out, it's hard to make that a requirement, even though it probably is in the best interest of all your employees, if we don't have an adequate supply, which, and I think you all know, the supply chain is not there yet. So I just want to let you all know we are working on that as a state in terms of procuring cloth face coverings. And the L&I guidance that came out today in terms of face covering mask and respirator choices for employers other than hospitals and clinics, that's posted on their website. And all of you would be what's considered in the low risk this type, where it would be strongly recommended that cloth face coverings be worn by employees and customers.
We, agree with you. Strongly recommended. And not long before this call started, Sherry was with Taylor Hennessy, and yesterday I was on the phone with FEMA, and we're not going to get any masks from the state. That other industries got prioritized above us, and that she doesn't see, they're not going to be able to keep their original commitment to us. So that's going to be one of the topics we explore today after your presentation. So I did want to let you know that we were very excited and expected a nice size shipment in, and that's not going to happen. So,
but just for clarification, Jan, you're talking about you're not going to receive them from FEMA. Is that correct?
Correct, and through emergency management, correct.
Correct, but we are working on a statewide basis about just procuring PPE generally for the state, and how to prioritize, what types of PPE and for whom, and how that should be prioritized, and who pays for it, those kinds of considerations. So that those conversations are happening on a statewide basis, and certainly your members are part of our consideration when we're trying to decide how to prioritize particularly cloth face coverings that we are procuring for the state.
Is good news, Sherry. We run into dead other sourcing, so appreciate that very much. So, Rebecca, are there any questions yet? Because I have one. If not,
I have a.
No.
Go ahead. Somebody just talked.
Yeah.
Was that Kevin?
On the markets.
Kevin, yeah, this is Kevin Weatherall from the markets.
Retailers can go to the Amazon website and register under the critical supplies. I was able to get our company approved to be able to order.
Kevin, you're coming in and out, and we can't catch everything you're saying. If you can get closer to your phone or something.
Okay, how's this?
Better.
Okay, so retailers can go. I was able to go to the Amazon business and register my business to be able to get COVID-19 PPP supplies through a website that's just dedicated to businesses that would be considered sort of first responder class. So there is an opportunity to, go out and secure some through Amazon. I don't imagine anybody sitting on their hands on this, but it's there if it's there. You just have to work to get it. I've gotten in about 2,000 masks from 350 employees. Cost money, but I got them. And for the governor, I think the mask requirement in supermarkets, sooner the better, but it would be nice maybe if they sort of signposted that something like that was highly likely in the future, so that people start getting prepared sooner rather than later. I just think when things start loosening up and the weather gets better, you're going to have I think the risk is higher, not lower, as time goes by. So, my 2 cents.
Yeah, that's a great point, Kevin. And we do want to signal that the requirement is coming, not just for employers to provide to their employees, and also for customers and citizens generally speaking. Because you're right, as the economy starts to open back up and more people are out and about, I know you all have seen through various news sources that the numbers don't particularly look great, yet there's still such pressure to open back up our economy. So we need to do all we can to protect ourselves and the people that work with us. So I appreciate your comments.
And Sherry, the numbers go along with the question I was going to ask you to explain to us today. When the governor unveiled this, actually on Friday, but we saw the final Monday, it has a 3-week period in between each phase. Is that 3 weeks set in stone, or will you be looking at numbers? And if the numbers go the right way, it may open earlier. If it goes the wrong way, it may be more delayed.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Jen. So the 3 weeks is a minimum, right? And with the ability that based on the numbers, and there's various numbers that that the governor and his team are looking at, that could certainly be pushed out. So, and I'm happy to run through with what some of those metrics are that he's looking at, unless you guys feel comfortable and know what they are, or just provide you a link so that you can see what those numbers are.
Well, why don't you go ahead and give us a link, and the staff can put the link up on the screen too.
Yeah, so I mean, he's looking at what the disease activity is, so the number and trend for COVID-19 cases, and looking at how he's also looking at the modeling data, and often references the Institute for Disease Modeling and the Institute for Health Metrics and Evaluation. So they're the two models that he relies on. And then also looking at, how are people moving around the state and relying on DOT traffic? Are people really staying at home? And then we're also looking at, how's our healthcare system doing? Do we still have beds that are ready and can be ready? Do we still have PPE supply availability at our hospitals and long-term care facilities? And then importantly, looking at our testing capacity and availability, which we're woefully behind in, and actively working on, and then also putting into place a good system for case and contact investigations. The governor's talked a lot about staffing up on contact tracing, so that once somebody is diagnosed with COVID-19, that we have the ability to go to find out and determine who that person has been in contact with. And then lastly, really focusing on the ability to protect our high-risk populations, and looking at the number of outbreaks we have in things like long-term care facilities, and looking at demographic data, including not just age, but ethnicity. So those are the numbers that the governor really is looking at on a daily basis. And to Jan's point, if it's a 3-week minimum, but if those numbers aren't trending well, and it's not one number in particular, it's not like one thing goes poorly and he's going to not go to the next phase, but in some combination thereof, if things aren't trending in the right direction, he will not move to the next phase, and he can even go back a phase.
Does that
So,
open up
Carrie,
a question?
We do have a couple of questions in the question box if you want me to do those now.
Yeah, who just tried to speak?
Hello, Tammy, I have a question.
Oh,
You what?
okay, let's get our member questions in here, and then
Yeah.
we'll take yours,
Or-
Tammy.
Definitely.
Go ahead. Somebody's trying to speak. Go ahead. State your name and company, please. Nope, I guess they're just not on mute. Okay, Rebecca, go ahead and read the questions.
Is the governor considering requiring the public to wear masks as the state opens up?
I just did.
Oh boy.
pardon me? Yeah, so is the governor going to require citizens to wear masks? The answer is yes, but we don't have a date certain on that, and still wanting to ensure that, particularly for communities where lower income communities that may not be able to afford or properly provide masks for their families, that we have a source ready for them. We have a lot of philanthropic activity in that arena, so we're actively working on procuring a supply specifically for those populations. So we're anticipating in the next 2 to 3 weeks roughly that will be required for citizens when they go out in public. I think there's 8 states now who have made that requirement.
Okay, and the next question is, how can the governor continue to look at increased cases as a reason to stay closed when by definition, as we do more and more testing, more cases will be discovered?
Well, that is a very good question, and one that I admittedly don't have a great answer for, but I'm happy to provide an answer and get back to you all.
That would be a good and then we can post the answer up on our website on there. I know some states have made a priority of doing testing at the grocery stores, since other than the medical industry, which are being tested now, the grocery industry was the first to be on the front lines and the greatest exposure, and that they prioritize the grocery stores for testing. I don't know if the governor's office has had any discussions regarding that.
And then it looks like Kyle Sarr wants to speak. Sorry.
Could Sherry answer that, and then we'll have Kyle speak?
Sorry.
Yes, Jan. I mean, the short answer is yes. That certainly the businesses that were deemed essential businesses from the beginning, and I can talk a little bit about how that language is probably going to change, the essential versus non-essential, but certainly businesses such as yours that were deemed essential would have a prioritization on testing. Similar, I mean, I think we are often thinking of you all and your employees as first responders. I mean, you're out there on the front lines interacting with the public on a daily basis. So the short answer is yes, there will be a prioritization, and you all will be in the first tier of prioritization for testing.
Oh, good to know. Thanks.
But just a little bit on the last question about, how if the governor's going to rely on numbers to get to the next phase, and that we are, I mean, that's exactly right. We are anticipating as our testing capacity increases, we are going to see those numbers get higher in terms of people who will test positive for COVID-19. I think that will be part of the equation and part of that benchmark, that number will probably move with the realization that yes, more people are testing positive because our testing capacity has in fact increased. But I will get you some more specifics on that. I don't feel like that's a great answer.
No write-off for us.
Excellent. Kyle, you want to jump in and introduce yourself?
Hi, my name's Kyle Sarr. I'm with Sarr's Super Saver Foods. My question I have for you is on moving in the 3 weeks when the governor will decide if we move to that next stage. Is that decision heavily weighed on the availability of masks? And is part of that, I guess, does that next phase include people having to wear masks out in public? And so if the availability of masks isn't there, the move won't go forward?
That is certainly part of the equation, Kyle. Yes. So, I mean, it's not just face coverings, but that is certainly an important piece of the equation. And we have every reason to think that our supply chain will be in much better shape by the time we get to phase 2. I know. Now, having said that, some counties, as you know, are moving towards going to phase 2 sooner than later, and there are parameters in the governor's plan that if certain counties, if they meet the criteria and get a buyout from their local health jurisdiction, that they can move to the next phase sooner than the 3 weeks. But I think part of that equation will also be on the availability of PPE, and not just face coverings, as you described, but also things like engineering and engineering design of the retail establishment. You know, are you putting those plexiglass protectors up, and are you guiding the flow of traffic, if you will, from your patrons? So all that will be considered when deciding whether to open up a particular business.
Okay. And then I had one other quick thing. I was just hoping, I know you went through kind of rapidly a lot of the different factors the governor is taking into account when he is making his decision on moving to next tiers. If possible, it'd be, just to have, if we could have just, a list. I know it's just general factors, and I know there's a lot of complexity built in, but it's just a general list of those factors, just so, for my information, so I can know kind of what those decisions are being hinged on.
Yeah, absolutely. That's part of his plan that's posted on our website, and I can certainly send a link to Jan, and she can get it out to all of you.
Is that the phased approach to recovery, Sherry?
It's the Safe Start Washington. Yeah, phased approach to recovery.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Pages.
It is already on our website. Got posted yesterday. So
great.
Rebecca's showing it on the screen right now, the cover of it. So you can download that at any time. Other questions? Off of the Safe Start for Washington, well, I guess it is part of it, but one of a big concern for all of us is our meat and poultry supply, and because we do have a number of processors, important processors in our state. Can you tell us at all what the governor's office or what you folks are doing to help them get up and operating again, and what you expect in terms of with them social distancing, what their production is going to be anytime in the near future?
Yeah, I know that is being contemplated, Jan. I don't have an answer, and that's one of the things I'll need to get back to you. I know that there's a couple people from the governor's office that are working on that very issue, so I can provide some of that information to you as well as their contact information, and they might be able to help get you an answer. But that is certainly being contemplated.
Okay, that would be wonderful. That's our new trouble spot. Get one ironed out, and then another one comes along. So, okay, any other questions here? You've got a great resource right here at your fingertips, user. Any questions?
If there aren't any member questions, this is Tammy. I do have a follow-up.
Go ahead.
Okay. Sherry, on the county variance request, it says that there may be a consideration into phase 2. Will they also be considering that as we continue on through the other phases? So like if a county maybe has to go the full 3 weeks to get to phase 2, but maybe they can expedite into phase 3, would that be an opportunity as well? So it's not just into phase 2, it's into the other phases as well?
Yeah, that's absolutely right, Tammy. And I think we're going to correct the document to be more clear about that. But yes, as we enter the other phases as well, there'll be opportunities for counties to move quicker through that process.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
I have a quick question. This is Carolyn.
Go ahead, Carolyn.
Yeah, Sherry, this is Carolyn Logue. We know each other.
Hi, Carolyn.
I'd heard that one of the metrics, as more testing, I was thinking about the more testing, that the metric being looked at is the percentage of positive tests, as opposed to the number of positive tests, the percentage of positive to negative.
Is that are you asking for a confirmation of that?
Yeah, that's what I had heard, that was the metric that was being looked at in most of these places, that knowing, we're recognizing the number would go up with more testing, but whether or not, I think we're running around 7 to 8% positive right now, whether or not that number starts to go up would be a metric. So that's what that's what I'd heard.
Yeah, so I think it is the percentage, but even that percentage, as was pointed out, is expected to go up too, because the more testing we do, the higher the percentage is going to be. But you're right, it is going to be the percentage of positive tests, knowing that it will go up as the number of tests are increasing.
And then just one quick, sorry, go ahead. One quick follow-up, because I know that in New Jersey, New York, they actually didn't just test the workers, they actually were doing random antibody tests in grocery stores. Is there any talk about doing that in Washington?
Well, I guess the short answer is I don't know if that discussion has happened. I can certainly find out for you, though. I have heard of testing of customers, but not necessarily just at grocery stores. And it would probably have to be at on a somewhat volunteer basis. But let me get back to you on some more specifics.
Sherry, this is Don Stoltz. I have the food market stores out in the Gig Harbor area. I have a question that is not necessarily specific to this industry, but I don't hear anything in the media talking about government, whether it's a state or county or cities or anything, cutting expenses so that we don't hit an absolute brick wall when all of a sudden the tax revenue is not coming in, that we all know it's not coming in because the businesses are closed. And 6 months from now, we run into a huge problem.
Oh, no, somebody put us on hold. Oh.
Got him.
Good.
So is there some discussion going on in the background that maybe just media isn't reporting, of saying, hey, this is going to happen, and 3 months from now we can't, with all the businesses that are barely surviving now, we can't just come in and raise taxes because all of a sudden, we have a big shortfall of revenue, which we know we will have a shortfall of revenue at the state level.
Yeah, you're right, Don. It hasn't gotten a lot of media play, and I suspect it will in the months ahead, especially if the legislature convenes sooner than later for a special session. But I can tell you that from a state government perspective, our director of the Office of Financial Management, who does all the state budgeting for state agencies, he put a memo out probably 3 weeks ago to all agencies directors saying, give us your plan for cutting your budget. And I want to see a 5%, a 10%, and a 15% plan on how you're going to cut your budgets. And we're starting there. And I know local governments are having those same conversations. I speak pretty frequently with the Association of Washington Cities and the Washington State Association of Counties. And I know their members, they represent all 39 counties and 281 cities across the state, are having those difficult discussions too. So you're absolutely right. We know our revenues are down significantly because of businesses not being able to operate. So we are planning accordingly. And I suspect that both state and local governments will be hit pretty hard in the next budgeting cycle, if not before then.
Yeah, well, I'm glad. I'm really, really, really glad to hear that, honestly. And I guess I would just point out, and you can carry this message on, that for business people, I mean, we happen to still be operating, but for business people, you instantly cut your expenses. You instantly look at every place you can possibly reduce costs because you're trying to conserve cash at that point. You don't wait till you run out of cash and then say, oh, I have to do something because I don't have any cash left. And that's, I guess, what I would hope is going on in the background in all the governmental agencies.
Well, to give credit to the governor, he did do some vetoing to save some cash. But yeah, probably not enough for the situation we're in. Well, Sherry,
Definitely.
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say definitely not. I think the latest projections, which I think are quite honestly going to only be worse, that the state's going to face anywhere up to a $7 billion shortfall. So your point is well taken.
We have a couple of questions that came in the question box if you have time.
Yeah, I've got a couple more minutes, sure.
Okay. How will the governor enforce mandatory masks? Business owners will not put their employees at risk of facing the public that do not conform.
Yeah, so a very, very good question. And we're getting that enforcement question just for every business that, you know, as the governor has requirements, who's enforcing it and how? So we certainly, and that was part of the governor's decision to delay the requirement, is not only the supply, but who was going to enforce, especially if the supply wasn't there to begin with. So the short answer is that we know that as much as we would not be putting you all on the front lines of enforcement, that would happen just because of the nature of how you interact with your customers. So the expectation would not be that you all would be enforcing that as business owners. But to the extent that we can rely on local law enforcement or Department of Health or other governmental entities, quite honestly, it's going to be a challenge. Enforcement is going to be a challenge, just like we've seen in so many areas. So that's why I think it's really important that we get the supply right before we start making it a requirement, and that we allow you some flexibility on how you choose to enforce. That certainly don't want to penalize any of you as business owners if that enforcement capacity can't be met on our end. So that's a discussion that I'd like to continue to have with you all as we move forward in these next couple of weeks on what are your ideas for enforcement? How can we best situate you so that we're all successful here? So if you have ideas, really like to hear them.
Here's one. Start running the PSAs now that say, my mask protects you, your mask protects me.
Yeah. And then,
you can certainly.
Sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry, go ahead. No, I was just going to say that, yeah, I'm getting started sooner than later with the educational campaign and public service announcements. It's great.
So the last one here is, Seattle is also considering a requirement for masks. Are you working together to ensure coordinated release and requirements?
So quite honestly, I thought Seattle was going to come out with a requirement this week. That hasn't happened. I think in part because the governor didn't make it a requirement statewide. We are in close conversations, not only with the city of Seattle, but King County and Pierce County and Clark County, who is contemplating similar face covering requirements. In a perfect world, we'd love to do it all at the same time for consistency, number one. As you've seen in other states like California, where you have a lot of other local jurisdictions such as San Francisco City and County, San Diego City and County, LA City and County, that have gone ahead and made the face covering requirement even though the state hasn't done it. So I guess the short answer is we'd like to be consistent and roll it out at the same time, and that it doesn't always work out that way. So we're continuing to speak with both the mayor in her office and the county exec in his office, and we'll see how this goes.
Sherry, thank you so very much for spending this time with us. We appreciate it very much. We look forward to continuing our work with you, and any additional information you want to provide, we are very diligent about posting it on our website under our COVID information. So we would appreciate it, and I look forward to further discussions with you on those masks.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks so much for the opportunity. And I'll get back to you with some answers on those questions. So thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, Sherry. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and move over to the staff reports to touch on some things. So I was to talk about the FEMA fiasco, and we talked about that. We are not expecting the shipments to come through. There might be some smaller shipments come through, but we need to just move forward and figure out our own solutions at this point. Tammy, can you talk about a new resource on masks?
Yeah, so I've been doing work on this, and City of Seattle, as Sherry had mentioned, they thought they were going to come out with a requirement. I met with the City of Seattle and talked to them about this and explained that we were still having challenges. They originally told me they had all these resources. Well, when our members started reaching out to those resources, they really weren't that predictable and accountable for getting what we needed. So finally, we did hear from one resource, and I don't know if Tyler's on the phone, but he did order some, and so we're waiting to make sure that they do follow through with what they said they can do as far as shipment goes. I have posted that link on our website, so our members can kind of get first crack at those. And we're continuing to work with some other vendors. I met with another one today, a little bit more expensive. So I'm doing a lot of research now, trying to find the best ones for all of you, so we can just post them on our site, and then we'll get them to FEMA once we know our members have been taken care of.
The
Tammy?
Dashboard where? Where is that on our website now under the resources?
So I think, Melissa, if you're on the phone, you can point them to exactly where that was posted.
So Rebecca has it, it's posted under new this week, and then it's also posted under sanitation and PPE.
The FEMA dashboard?
No, our dashboard.
Tammy, this is
Yes.
Carolyn. Have members reached out to their where their suppliers for aprons and polo shirts and things like that? Because I know some other industries are starting to do that, and the guys that broker those things are starting to also do some sourcing for masks.
And that's a great question that I do not know what other sources our members have checked.
Well, if any of you come across a great resource, if you would share it with Tammy, we will make sure we get the information on our website and get it out to you, so you can also share in the resources. Okay, if we can.
Jan, we lost you.
Hello?
Okay.
There.
Am I here?
You're here now.
Oh, okay. That's weird. Kat, I was calling on Kat.
All right. I will make this quick and let me know if I go out because my headphones are being a little weird right now. This is just a very quick update on the price gouging. There has been a significant complaints about price gouging, but we have talked with the Attorney General's office about the upcoming meat and poultry price spikes in sporadic supply sources. So they do know that this is an issue. We have a meat question and answers on the website, as well as suggested signage for our members to let the consumers know that the meat prices are being increased, but there's a reason behind it, etc. So just keep in mind that we do know that these things are happening, and we are working with the AG's office, and they have been pretty good about trying to shift through the different complaints. So thanks.
Tammy, you wanted to touch on the King County food delivery?
I do, thank you. So all of our stores in King County should have received an email from me. I had King County reach out to me. Their Aging and Disability Services Division wants to develop a program for their older disabled people, where they will take their orders and they will purchase the food and they'll deliver the groceries. And so they wanted to arrange agreements with our grocery stores in those areas where they would bill King County directly, and then someone would come in, pick up those groceries and deliver them. So if you're in the area, if you haven't seen my email or haven't had time to respond, please do. I really need to get the information over to them. And, I appreciate that they're engaging us this time with this opportunity. So if you have any questions, please let me know.
Thanks, Tammy. And I'm just gonna let everybody know that has finally got good word at Visa. You now that Visa is extending their requirement for EMV on the fuel pumps to April, and is falling in line, but some odd reason, April 16th of 2021, excuse me, 2021. So you've got plenty of time. We hope that's plenty of time. So pressure is off on fuel pump EMV. Before we go into any polling, I want to just open it up on the lines, but say that next week on our webinar, we will be featuring Mike Latham, who is with Town and Country. Many of you know him. He's been in the industry a long time, and he also does all of our food code training for our workshops. And Mike has written a comprehensive response plan to COVID-19, and it's in a Word document, so it's easy for our members to take that document and revise it to whatever works for them. We will be sending that out in advance to the webinar next week, and then he'll be on the phone to kind of overview and answer any questions you may have. Then the following week on May 19th, we had a number of requests to have John Ross with IGA International join us a month after his last call to give us any update on China. I did receive a document today that he has published that is excellent, talking about what will life be post-COVID-19. And so we do have that request in. After that point, we're going to evaluate if you want us to continue with the webinars, or if you feel like that you don't need this resource. So could we, before we do have a few polling questions I want to ask you about, because I have been requested by TVW, which is the government station that covers the legislature and the governor's office. I have asked to do a 25-minute interview tomorrow on the grocery industry, on supplies, on what the issues are, kind of answering questions that consumers might have. So I want to make sure I get some updated survey polling answers from you, so I'm up to date on what you're experiencing. But could we go ahead and see if any of our members have questions about anything that we have talked about or not talked about?
Jan, this is Don. I have a quick question. Where on the website is the signage and things that you talked about for the meat pricing and meat costs going up? Where is that?
Melissa?
I think Kat was talking about it.
I'm actually not sure where that got posted. Kat, do you know where we put that?
I am looking.
We'll get you that answer before we hang up. Kat, you'll find it. It's really been a challenge for us to figure out a logical place to put these things for you. So
That's
while
why I
we're
asked. Otherwise, I can't find it.
So while we're waiting for that, we do have a couple of questions in the question box. It says, we are having issues between the superintendent of schools and L&I with minor workers. According to L&I, they have now established our time as non-school, so the minors can work more, but the superintendent still wants to limit the hours.
Oh, good for us to know. Well, we'll be all
Yeah.
over that and get a response for you. You are the first to let us know that that was occurring. So we will get a hold of L&I and the SPI and see what kind of solution we could work out. If you want to, do you have their name so we can respond to their email directly?
Yes.
Okay, all right, go ahead.
Can you direct us to the L&I guidance that was mentioned earlier concerning masks, not seeing on New This Week or on the L&I website?
That is in our L&I section.
We do have a section for L&I.
Yeah, under labor.
Go under labor resources. There are some great documents there.
Yeah, and it says labor and industries, and it's like COVID. I'm trying to remember the name of it exactly right now.
Resources.
One I have is called Washington Coronavirus Hazard Considerations for Employers, dated May 2nd. It's the new guidance that came out today.
Oh, that's the brand new one today. Oh, so you're talking about the one Sherry referred to. Okay. Well, we have not got that posted yet, but we will post it. It will go up under new today. New this week, excuse me. We'll have that up shortly after this call, and then it will be also posted under labor resources if you want to look it up next week. So did we get an answer to Dawn's question?
Jan, if it's the, I have the meat FAQ and the meat department notice, so I just added those back under new this week. I'm not sure if that's what he was referring to.
That is what we referred to earlier, so he's yes.
So that'll be up there for the week, and then we'll determine where else it will get posted on the site.
Okay,
I think Kat said that there was some suggested signage or something. Is that part of that?
That should be the meat department notice.
Okay.
Yeah. And then if you need help, just let us know, and excuse me, and we can make it nicer if you want it to be.
Okay, any more questions before we go through the few survey questions real fast? Any other questions? Nope. Okay. If we could put the poll up, and if you that are at your computer can get ready with your trigger finger here, would it be beneficial to create a COVID member only forum where retailers and suppliers can exchange questions and solutions? We've had this request from a few members. We want to see how many people would be interested in posting your question out for other retailers or suppliers to respond with ideas. So if you could answer that for us. Second question, if we do that, should there be a separate forum for convenience stores versus the supermarkets, as some of those challenges are different? Next question. Are you experiencing a shortage in some meat and poultry cuts? We've had some spotty reports on that, but I'd like to know how widespread that is. So when I'm being interviewed tomorrow on TVW. And then the next one is, are you experiencing spikes in prices on some meat and poultry cuts? And finally, what other products do you continue to experience shortages with? And we put up kind of the ones that have been historical through COVID. If you could mark if any of those are still shortages. And I will appreciate that input. And I think we're ready to close this with no more questions. Hope you found it informative, and give us your questions or comments for next week. Anything you'd like to have presented. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.